Hi, welcome to Random Walks with HR with me, Tim Peppers, and today we're talking about the future of work and specifically the impact of technology. So, how technology and that could be robots, automation, that could be algorithms, that could be any kind of different machinery coming into the workplace and impacting your workforce. Now, when we think about the impact of technology, it's very easy if we think about three different dimensions. Now give us a roadmap to understand actually what's going to happen in the future and how potentially we need to manage that impact. So the first dimension is kind versus wicked. This is the environment that the work is currently done. And a kind environment is an environment that's kind to machines or robots to be able to learn. So a kind environment is repetitive and it's very clear about what the outcomes are, if they're good or bad. A good example of this is baseball, right? Okay, in baseball, the same thing happens over and over again. The pitcher throws the ball, the batsman swings, he might miss it. That's a bad outcome for the batsman. He might hit the ball. That's probably a good outcome, especially if the ball goes in or goes out of the park for a home run. Those are good. If the ball goes up in the air and the fielder catches it, or the fielder catches after it bounces and throws them out, that's a bad outcome. So it's very clear. It's like a Boolean outcome. It's very clear if it was good or bad. Now, football, or for our American viewers, football, that's a different environment. That's what's called a wicked environment, okay? The same thing kind of happens, but it's always a little bit different, okay? Players pass the ball, or let's say players in the corner and they put a cross in. It's always slightly different, how many players are in the box, how many attackers, how many defenders, where's the goalkeeper? Is the best option right there to cross the ball into the box, maybe cross it near post, maybe cross it back post? Should they actually take a shot? If the goalkeeper's off its line, should they pull it back for a different angle? It's not always clear what the best course of action is. If you think about football, if you take a shot on goal, is that good? Well, difficult to say really. If the shot's on target, that's kind of good, but if it doesn't go in, that's maybe not good. If the ball goes into the goal, that's great. But actually, there's not that many goals in football. So if we're really trying to understand about when is the best time to take a shot or when is the best time to pass, the fact that we have less goals in football than we have, hits and home runs and runs in baseball means it's much harder for machines to really understand, was that a good idea or was that a bad idea? So that's where that last kind of last sort of facet comes in terms of volume. We need a lot of data for machines and robots and algorithms to learn. If we don't have that data, then essentially it's very difficult, and then you can start get some weird results. And data and training data is the key for machines and algorithms and robots to learn how to do a job well. So once we know what are kind and wicked environments and what are those different work environments that we're currently in, we can then start forecasting, well, actually, what's going to happen. And there's two different things that can happen when machines and robots come into the workplace. The first one is automation, and the second one is augmentation. Now, automation is when a robot or a machine or an algorithm essentially takes away a process. A human no longer has to do that, right? So for this, let's think about robot nurses, right? And these are a real thing. I'm not making it up. But robot nurses, especially in Asian countries like Japan and Korea, have been highly adopted. And what they do is a range of different tasks and processes and have different functionality. But one thing they do is porterage. They move people around hospitals. They move people around care homes, okay? Very popular in elderly care homes, especially in Japan where there's an aging population. Now, if you think about that task, moving people around a care home, well, actually, if you're a porter, then most of your role is going to be automated, right? If 90% of your job is moving patients around, moving them, driving to the hospital or whatever, then actually having a robot nurse be able to move patients around the care home is actually going to automate your role. If you're a nurse or an elderly care assistant, well, actually part of your job is moving people around and portering and kind of getting them to the car so they can go to the hospital. But also your job involves other things such as care and sort of bringing breakfasts and doing kind of check-ins with patients, all these other tasks that require more human skills and work in slightly more wicked environment where it's less clear. You have to move this person from A to B. You maybe have to think and make decisions about how you're going to approach this problem or bring a human touch to that conversation. So what the robot nurse is actually doing is actually augmenting the nurses, especially as it has all this other functionality. Okay, you can it's connect to the internet and you can dial up a doctor. They're on call for 24 hours, and then the nurse can actually perform other tasks under the supervision of a doctor. They can access information from the web. It holds a whole load of different tools and technology. So actually, what's happening is it's taking the nurse's role, taking away some of those kind and unwanted skills and tasks and processes like moving patients around and allowing them to do an actually more superior job. The other interesting thing about robot nurses is that you think technology is going to come and take away roles. Actually, if 20% of your role is porterage, then actually you can make an argument that 20% of nurses are no longer required because you can get away with 20% less nurses. What's actually happening is that when robot nurses has been introduced into different care homes in different areas in different countries, what we're seeing is the amount of nurses increasing for a number of reasons. One, nurses don't particularly want to be porters, so actually it's making the nurse a much more attractive job. B, they can work overnight, so there's less nurses, human nurses that you need on overnight shifts. And the third thing that's interesting is actually nurses or elderly care assistants actually a lot of time they retire early because of bad back problems and they can't do the physical requirements of the job. So actually what you're finding is that the robot nurse is actually increasing the supply of nurses and elderly care assistants within hospitals and retirement homes. So you've really got to think about automation and augmentation as a sort of systems thinking, okay? Think about break down all those different roles that you're looking at, break them down to tasks, understand if that task is a kind of wicked environment that's working in. You understand the technology, but then you've got to apply that systems thinking to really think about how is this going to affect the role in the future, which area is going to grow, and actually what some unexpected pain points, like reducing early retirement, are actually going to enable and improve your workforce and their day-to-day job. Now, once you've kind of done all that analysis, there's one last dimension that you really need to think about, and that's around creative destruction and destructive creation. And this is really around what is going to happen to your market or to your company or to your roles once the technology comes in. And creative destruction is essentially an economic theory that I think was 1950s, but it was a reaction to traditional theories where in economics you'd say, well, if something happens to the market, there's change and then it stabilizes. Creative destruction essentially says, no, markets don't stabilize. What they do is they actually constantly transforming, constantly evolving, constantly there's destruction coming in and there's new things coming out. And what happens with technology often is that something comes in, it creates a problem in the market, a temporary problem, but then it unleashes all these new skills, capabilities, and opportunities that we can leverage in the future. So let's take an example of the car in America. Okay, Henry Ford started mass producing cars. That mass produced then tractors and then lorries. Okay, so suddenly, at the turn of the 20th century, about roughly 50%, I think it's about 48% of Americans were in agriculture, so basically farmers. Suddenly you got this tractor that can work all day, only needs one person to use it, taking away 20 or 30 people's jobs. You fear there's mass unemployment. However, what happens is that then the truck and the tractor then create all these other industries and logistics and then be able to move your products all around the country. So actually it's creating roles somewhere else. Now, the interesting thing is that, slightly later, back in the 1930s, was actually someone had the smart idea of taking a truck and putting a shipping container on the back of it. And then when you go to the port, you then have a crane that takes the shipping container from the lorry, puts it onto the boat, and then the boat can sail away. And this was a problem, a solution to a really big problem, which was essentially if you were going to ship goods or produce, it actually took a long time because at the docks it was heavily unionized, and actually it was a very inefficient process of people taking lorries, goods, put them onto boats, and the boat sailing away. What the crane did, and essentially it unlocked locked international trade. So now, not only was it very cost effective, very fast, very efficient to take a product from, let's say, Miami and then ship it all the way to New York, it actually became a lot cheaper, a lot more efficient to ship it all around the world, to Japan, to Europe, to South America. And suddenly America, with these two inventions, the lorry and the crane, becomes a leader in international trade. Okay, so if you think about the motor car and the tractor and the lorry coming in, it's suddenly taken away jobs, or at least the jobs it's taken away in agriculture. They're being slightly recompensed by lorries and logistics, but probably people aren't imagining there's going to be another invention, the crane, that's then going to allow suddenly industries to boom, industries like manufacturing, and actually all those American farmers are then suddenly going to be working in manufacturing and other industries, or even at docks, where suddenly, because there's international trade, there's all these new different requirements around customs and all these other kind of different these different requirements and these different roles, because America is exporting so many goods. So when we put it all together, what do we get? Well, if you think from an HR point of view, we can take a role or a piece of technology and then kind of understand through these different steps exactly how technology is going to impact the workplace. So let's take a very simple one. Let's talk about chatbots. Okay, we've got a call center, chatbots are coming. Okay, first thing, is a kind of wicked environment. What is a chatbot going to do? Is it going to deal with sort of very difficult customer queries? Let's say we're a mortgage company. Okay, is it going to deal with very difficult queries, such as people calling up, they want to defer payments, or they want to kind of do something particularly difficult, or maybe they have they've been living up a mountain in Peru for 4 years, so there's no history of where they are within the systems, or their credit score is a bit weird. Well, no, that's kind of a unique situation. A robot, unless there's a whole load of people living up in the hills of Peru, no, that kind of role and that kind of task is still going to be done by a human, because it's a wicked environment. But actually, if it's filling in application forms, if it's just typing things in, if it's just answering very basic queries, then actually or password resets, that's a wicked environment. So individuals who are dealing with those types of calls within the call center, that job will be taken away by the chatbot very quickly. So we can already understand which types of calls and which areas of the call center are going to be heavily impacted, whereas others are actually, we're not going to be able to technology is not going to be able to penetrate those kind of conversations and those kind of tasks. So that gives us our automation versus augmentation in terms of what's going to be automated. But we also need to think about further beyond, well, what are the chatbots also going to enable the workforce to do? And a good example of chatbots is actually the person in the call center is also going to have the chatbot there and will have all that data that the chatbot is accessing. So in fact, the person in the call center is then going to be augmented to a certain extent. They're going to have a huge more of information, and actually they can then either do a much more varied job. So instead of having these one type of calls that are around mortgages, suddenly they can also take calls about other products. It might be ISAs, it might be pensions, it might be payday loans, other different kind of products. They don't have to be an SME in, because they have that technology which is giving them that basic information over all these different products. The other thing it could do is actually help them become more high level. Okay, rather than just sort of giving a name and doing password resets, they could then do something a little more difficult with some training in terms of becoming a financial advisor or giving people advice about their mortgages. So again, it's augmenting them, getting them to do a slightly different role that's more advanced as the technology takes away those basic, very repetitive, very easy tasks away from them. And that gives us the whole lens around creative destruction and destructive creation, right? If your chatbots are coming in purely because you want technology to come in, you want to reduce costs, you're not doing more products, and you don't have any plans to then become a financial advisor, you're still just going to sell the same thing. Well, that's probably a destructive creation. Okay, you're taking away work, and then your FTE requirements are going to go down. However, if the business strategy is to diversify its products and its portfolio, or maybe it wants to become more into a financial advisor and add value to the customers, then actually what you might have then is creative destruction. So if it's destructive creation, think tools such as employee relations and training, and looking at the wider talent market, or sorry, the local talent market, to see how we can reskill and offload talent. That's probably the tools. If you're thinking about creative destruction, you need to be thinking about what are the new roles, what are the new requirements. You're going to have new legal requirements. You're going to have a whole load of different requirements around SMEs for these different products that you're wanting to sell, and actually start retraining and reskilling people in the right directions, so you bring that workforce with you, and then you unleash the opportunities that this new technology is going to bring. Anyway, that was a very quick example. I hope it was useful. If you have questions or you have comments, please put them in the chat. And as always, find me on LinkedIn. More than happy to always talk about this. And if you enjoyed it, I'm sure there'll be more conversations about the future of work in the near future. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you for your time, and I hope this wasn't a complete waste of your time. Thanks.